if we are having those feelings of discomfort, we're probably doing something right. So that means sometimes saying no when everybody else is saying yes. And sometimes that means saying yes when everybody else is saying no. Hey everyone, my name is Priscilla Piper, and welcome to the Decision to Dance podcast. This is episode 18, the last episode of 2025. Can you believe it? I cannot. It's insane to me that we are at the end of this year. And as many of you know, I started and released this podcast September of this year. So the fact that I have episodes released and that y'all have been listening to them is very surreal. And what blows my mind even more is that I'm going to say many of y'all, it may not be many to some, but I think it's a lot. Many of y'all have been making us part of your Friday routine, your weekend routine, or just like a weekly routine. It's insane to me how consistent y'all have been. So thank you for that. And if you have been one of those people who have been listening consistently and have felt like this podcast has enhanced your life in some way, I want to ask you a favor. Go to the app that you are listening to this podcast on and give us a rating. 4 stars, 5 stars, whatever comes to your mind. If it's less than 4 stars, I would just say DM me if you don't mind. Definitely would do what I can to make it better. But if you've been listening consistently and you've enjoyed it enough thus far, leave your reviews. And I ask that because when you are purchasing a new product, when you are taking a dance class, we are all reading the reviews, we're reading the comments. What are people saying? Is this worth my time and my money? And so, as I'm trying to get this podcast to reach its target audience, it's very helpful to have those ratings on the podcast, because if someone new goes to the podcast and they see those reviews, they're going to know that it is worth their time. And if you are on YouTube, there's not really a way to leave a review, but what you can do is leave a thumbs up and leave your review in the comments. So I'm going to give you all just a moment to go ahead and do that. Thank you so much. And let's go ahead and get into today's episode. As we are wrapping up this year, I have been doing some reflecting, which I always do. I feel like everybody does during this time of year. It started to occur in November for me. But honestly, as I was assessing my year, I truthfully did not feel proud of myself. Honestly, I was kind of disappointed in myself, and I think it's because I didn't really achieve much as a dancer. This is the year that I've danced the least thus far. Over the last couple of years, I haven't been dancing often, but this one definitely has been minimal. I feel like every year I've grown as a dancer in some way. Even if I wasn't dancing consistently, still taking class here and there, doing an intensive, and applying the critiques I've received and seeing improvements. But this year, I didn't do an intensive and I just haven't been consistent. And I can make every excuse possible, but at the end of the day, it's an excuse. And I think because of that, I felt like I haven't achieved much. Although I have done a lot in other areas of my life, what feels like matters the most to me is dance, and I haven't done as much. And so I was feeling a little bit defeated. But I had to remind myself, like, you know what? There's a lot to be proud of, and I have to remember that it's not all about dance all the time, right? But if I'm feeling those things, then that means something. But I do have a lot to be proud of, and one of those things is starting this podcast. I had the idea of this podcast in December of 2023, and then I just kept ruminating on the idea of it, and then it wasn't until the last half of 2024 where I decided I'm going to look into how to start a podcast and started building this from the ground up. And so it's a huge accomplishment to have 18 episodes out, to have a tangible piece of my creative idea out into the world that is influencing and impacting other people is a big deal. But I remember when I was getting started in this, I was filming my intro. I was trying to memorize my intro and I was filming myself. And I remember saying, I cannot wait until I know what I'm doing. Like, I just cannot wait because I don't have a clue what I'm doing right now. And like, you don't think about it that much on the other side of it as like a consumer or as a listener. But when you're on the other side of it, you are thinking about lighting, you are thinking about your attire, your hair, your makeup, your equipment. And that's just the setup of it, right? And then you're thinking about the editing. And whew, that is not my strong suit, but I've come a long way. Editing, reaching out to people, scheduling, all of these like variables that you have to think about starting a podcast. And it's not easy, but I've done it and I'm in a much better place now, this time this year compared to last year. And I'm so thankful for that. And I knew I was going to get there, but I just had to keep working through the discomfort and stay consistent to get here. And recently, some of you may know, but the Eras Tour Docuseries has come out, and I do listen to Taylor Swift if you don't know that. But I was watching the docuseries, and that docuseries is heavily it's dancer forward, definitely. You learn more about the dancers on that tour and their stories. You see the choreographer, Mandy Moore, and the associate choreographer, Amanda Balin, and them working together and creating this huge, impactful tour. But there was a moment where you see the evolution of Taylor Swift, and she is young and performing to the smallest of crowds, and then you see those crowds grow and evolve, and then she's opening for artists, and then she's headlining her own tour, and now has essentially blown up into what she is today. And I remember I was in middle school and I was on a field trip and we were on a bus, and this girl next to me had an iPod and she had a playlist of songs, and she was like, "Oh, like you can listen to some music if you want." And so we like shared the iPod and like the headphones, and I remember Taylor Swift's first album being on that playlist, her debut album. So it's so insane to see the evolution. But all of that came with challenges and hurdles. Like, she had to believe in herself so much that she was on her own track, not listening to the noise, not worried about distractions, and just continuing to take one step forward and believe in who she is and her art and her work and her creativity and wanting to put that out into the world. But it didn't come without struggle. And it's not easy to bet on yourself when it feels like no one else is betting on you, even though that's life. Everyone's caught up in their own stuff. We're all just focused on ourselves, but it can be so easy, I think, to give up when there are those challenges thrown at you and you want to work towards your passion and your dreams and your desires, but it feels sometimes too out of reach. And I personally have felt that way. And I had a lot of thoughts about myself when I was watching those episodes. And I feel like personally, I'm at a point where this year I've just kind of slowly let dance fall to the sideline. It hasn't been a priority in my life for a while, but definitely this year. And I can totally see how easy it is for people to make those micro decisions over time, or lack thereof. I mean, you're always making a decision, even if you weren't making a decision. Making a small choice every day if you are going to work towards this thing that you're passionate about or you're not. And I feel like personally, I'm at a crossroads. And these are like the realizations I had while watching this. I personally am at a crossroads. I could either continue along this path where I make these small micro decisions over time and no longer make dance a priority, because that's been the case for me. Or do I take a hard left? Do I work towards living the life I want to live? And I have been working towards that, but I feel like I've been riding in the back seat a little bit too long. And it sometimes feels like, is this who I'm meant to be? Is this the life I'm supposed to be living? Or have I just become too patient within my process that I've now fallen into complacency? And I'm all for taking breaks. I'm all for taking a pause. But for what I need, it needs to be a major flip of a switch. And so I have a choice. Which direction am I going to go? There's another part of that docuseries where she's huddled around her dancers. This is before the last performance of the tour. And she talks about how she thinks about her dancers, her band members, her singers. She thinks about them as kids in the past who were denied opportunities, who weren't given a solo, who were told, do anything else, don't do this. But instead, those people didn't listen and they kept going and they fought for themselves. And that's exactly what got them to where they are, to be a part of one of the largest tours in history. And so I'm like watching this with like tears like in my eyes. And I'm like, she's talking to me. But it's like, yeah, am I gonna slowly give up? Or do I turn the other direction and just like fight for what I want and what I believe in and for myself and not listen to anybody that would be distracting me from achieving those things? And one of my favorite podcasters is Gary Vaynerchuck, who I have talked about before on this podcast. He's not a dancer, but he has talked about how adversity is the foundation of success. And when I heard that on one of his episodes, I took note because I was like, ooh, that hit heavy. Not that I felt like this year has been like the worst one ever, because it definitely has not been. I've been through way harder things than this year. But it just has felt like for a while that some things in my life are just too far out of reach. And I've felt that way in many areas of my life. I can sometimes get overwhelmed when it feels like things are just so far, but really most of the time those things aren't that far. It just feels that way, and I just need to keep going and stay consistent. But with that in mind, adversity is the foundation of success. That it's like the literal recipe of success. Like, you have to go through hard things. You have to get your hands dirty, get your face in the mud and stand back up. Like, that's just how it works. And if you do that with the consistency, you're going to achieve what you want to achieve. But it's so hard when you've got other people telling you one thing and you've got the thoughts in your head. Honestly, I feel like sometimes our like biggest enemy is just the thoughts in our heads. I know that's the case for me. So I have to remember that. It's like, it's okay for there to be struggle. It's okay for you to feel uncomfortable. That's part of the process. That's how this works. It's like the man in the arena quote by Teddy Roosevelt, if you know that quote. And if you don't know it, you should look it up. But it's like, who cares what all of these other people in the stadium are saying or thinking or doing? I'm the one in the arena. And I also think about, if you've seen that image of the diamond miner who is like just inches away from getting that diamond. There's like this much space between that person and the diamond, but they turned around, they gave up. And then there's the other person above them who's feet away from the diamonds, but they're going to keep going. And because of that consistency, they're going to get it. And I feel like that's where I'm at right now. It's like, which path am I going to take? So as I get into this year, I'm really going to be focusing on getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. And that's not a new phrase. I didn't make that up. But for me, that's what I need to focus on this year. And I want to remind ourselves that if we are having those feelings of discomfort, we're probably doing something right. So that means sometimes saying no when everybody else is saying yes. And sometimes that means saying yes when everybody else is saying no. Doing it for yourself. I recently was like, it would be really nice if I could see, like, have a visual of myself at like 80 years old, of me telling myself, like, you only have one life. You have to keep going. Do not give up. There's only so much time. Don't waste it. So I'm trying to give myself that visual, because I really don't want to ever feel like I've given up. But beyond that, I don't ever want to feel like I've just become complacent. And again, there's nothing wrong with like taking that step back, but I know for what I need this year, I've got to put the blinders on and just go forward. So that's going to be my mindset going into this year. And I'm not a New Year's resolution person at all. I've set so many that were unattainable and I never achieved them. But this is a mindset and a focus for this year that is really important to me. And I do feel like every year it's been that building block. But I can't stay in that back seat anymore. Like, I've got to take the reins. I have got to take the steering wheel and like drive forward on the course of my life that I want to be taking. So I hope none of you are feeling similar to me, but I just want to be transparent with where I'm at ending this year and what I'm going to be focusing on going into next year. And I can be your accountability partner if you need somebody, and maybe you can be mine too. And if you're somebody who's on the opposite side of this, who's like gone so hard that like maybe you're like, I need to take a moment to breathe, I would encourage you to do that. But for me, I'm going to be doing quite the opposite. And I'm not ready. It's not going to be comfortable, but that's the point of this. So I hope you all enjoy the last few days of your 2025. I hope you are spending time for yourself, with yourself, and or with your friends and with your family. I am going to be watching volume 2 of Stranger Things this weekend for sure. But other than that, definitely getting ready for next year. And I actually have some really great guest episodes that I'm really excited about for the start of this year. And I'm excited to see what the future holds in terms of this podcast, but also just of life and of dance. Thank you all for listening. I hope you all have a great rest of your year, and I will see you all in 2026. Bye.